Morning, Glory America. The story of our lives is a story of a pandemic right now. Never saw this one coming until January, but we've been warning you about it since January, and we're covering it every day here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Generalissimo decided to come to work today. That's a plus. Adam is always here. General Bennett, the phones, 1-800-520-1234. For those of you who go to bed early, the president was on Sean Hannity's Fox News Channel program last night talking about a number of things. Cut number 21, what about chloroquine?
Well, we had 10,000 units supplied and approved, and, it's a lot. And people have been taking it now for a day and a half, and we haven't heard bad news. We haven't heard too much news, period, but it's a little early. But we're going to probably know. And again, maybe it won't work, but we're going to give it a good shot. And why would we wait? Normally this process would take 2 years to get it approved, even though it's out there in terms of malaria. It's out for a different reason, but we have reason to believe, you've seen the same tests. I've seen tests and, in France and other places, Italy. So we have to see whether or not it works.
How was it, Mr. President, dealing with the Democrats on the Mitch McConnell rescue bill, cut number 22?
Well, as an example, the workers are going to get $3,000 for a family of four. They're going to get all sorts of things that they, frankly, in many cases, they wouldn't have even gotten if they had the job, if we didn't have to go through this hell. And it's a wonderful thing. The problem is, and you see it all right there, it's right in front. The problem we have is that it's very, very painful dealing with the Democrats because they ask for things that they've been trying to get for 10 years that we don't want to give, but if we don't get them or give it, we don't get the $2 trillion that gets sent out to people, the workers, and we don't get the $2 trillion that's going to really save companies. We have a lot of this money is going to save Boeing. It's going to save the airline industry. And, that means not only does it mean what it says, it also it means tremendous jobs. We can't let Boeing go. Boeing had a problem, big one, to start off with. Then on top of it, this happened. And we'll save Boeing, and we'll save the airlines, and we'll save other companies. We have companies that were virtually AAA, and all of a sudden you're loaning them money. You could call it a bridge loan, a short loan to get over it. In all cases, we intend getting the money back, getting interest, and in many cases, some cases, issuing what they call warrants, will get pieces of the company, large pieces of the company, and that will come back and inure to the benefit of U.S. taxpayers. I mean, they're going to be great.
So
it's a great thing.
He just put it out there. They had to deal with some crazy Democrats. The most important thing that was said yesterday was said by Ambassador Dr. Birx at the White House presser that some people cut away from, which is, if you're an NPR station, you didn't carry it yesterday, you are guilty of unconstitutional viewpoint discrimination, number one. Number two, you should never get a dime. No one should ever give you $1 again. You're all sucking at the public, and not to carry a briefing. And here's one of the reasons why you would carry the briefing. Dr. Birx had an important word for everyone about the doomsday stuff. Cut 19.
People. I'm sure many of you saw the recent report out of the UK about them adjusting completely their needs. This is really quite important. If you remember, that was the report that said there would be 500,000 deaths in the UK and 2.2 million deaths in the United States. They've adjusted that number in the UK to 20,000. So 500,000 to 20,000. We're looking into this in great detail to understand that adjustment. I'm going to say something that's a little bit complicated, but I'm going to try to do it in a way that we can all understand it together. In the model, either you have to have a large group of people who are asymptomatic, who've never presented for any test, in order to have the kind of numbers that were predicted. To get to 60 million people infected, or 6 million people infected, you have to have a large group of asymptomatics, because in no country to date have we seen an attack rate over 1 in 1,000. So either we're only measuring the tip of the iceberg of the symptomatic cases, and underneath it are a large group of people. So we're working very hard to get that antibody test, because that's a good way to figure out, who are all these people under here and do they exist? Or we have to we have the transmission completely wrong. So these are the things we're looking at, because the predictions of the models don't match the reality on the ground in either China, South Korea, or Italy. We are about 5 times the size of Italy. So if we were Italy and you did all those divisions, Italy should have close to 400,000 deaths. They're not close to achieving that. So these are the kinds of things we're trying to understand. Models are models. We're adapting now to the reality. There's enough data now of the real experience with the coronavirus on the ground to really make these predictions much more sound. So when people start talking about 20% of a population getting infected, it's very scary. But we don't have data that matches that based on the experience. And then finally, the situation about ventilators. We were reassured in meeting with our colleagues in New York that there are still ICU beds remaining, and there's still significant over 1,000 or 2,000 ventilators that have not been utilized yet. Please, for the reassurance of people around the world, to wake up this morning and look at people talking about creating DNR situations, do not resuscitate situations for patients. There is no situation in the United States right now that warrants that kind of discussion. You can be thinking about it in a hospital. Certainly many hospitals talk about this on a daily basis. But to say that to the American people, to make the implication that when they need a hospital bed, it's not going to be there, or when they need that ventilator, it's not going to be there. We don't have an evidence of that right now. And it's our job collectively to assure the American people that it's our collective job to make sure that doesn't happen. Right now, you can see these cases are concentrated in highly urban areas. There are other parts of the states that have lots of ventilators in other parts of New York State that don't have any infections right now. So we can be creative, we can meet the need by being responsive. But there's no model right now, no reality on the ground where we can see that 60 to 70% of Americans are going to get infected in the next 8 to 12 weeks. I just want to be clear about that. So we're adapting to the reality on the ground. We're looking at the models of how they can inform, but we also are learning very clearly from South Korea and from Italy and from Spain. Just a final, because I know many of you will look up my numbers. The only people who are over really 1 in 1,000 cases are people that have very small populations like Monaco and Liechtenstein. So you will see a different number coming from when your population is really tiny. One case can put you over 1 to 1,000.
So let me translate that for the Steelers fans. Stop panicking. This is a serious situation. It could kill a lot of people. The world is not ending. All right, it's a serious situation. It could kill a lot of people. The world is not ending. We are not out of ventilators. No one's making triage decisions on life or death in the United States. Hopefully, we never will have to. We are ahead of the response curve. We are doing good. We will be doing great. We are manufacturing what we need. We don't need to order people to do it. The American marketplace was pointed in the right direction. They are responding. Drew Brees, God bless it, the New Orleans Saints quarterback gave $5 million. I really want public health bonds to be offered so everyone can contribute to building up a public health response. Everybody can write a check and buy the moral equivalent of war bonds. But whether or not we're able to do that, let's not be negative beyond the necessity of being prepared. Markets, no. This is. I'm telling you, buy gold. If you have some excess assets and diversify, do it with Birch Gold. It's my sponsor, HughGold.com, or text 474747. My name, Hugh, H-U-G-H. Text Hugh to 474747, or go to HughGold.com. If you're an old-fashioned person, you can call 1-800-434-GOLD. But if you've got some assets that appreciated a bond fund, or you've got some cash and you want to diversify, use Birch Gold. I trust them. All you have to do is text my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 474747. Overnight, Japan went up 3%. Hong Kong went up a little bit. I have no idea if the Dow's going to go up as it did yesterday, 1,351 points, NASDAQ 413, S&P 154. But the market seems to be sending the signal that they know we are going to rebound. Now, it's still a wild market. But gold is at this time 1628, good entry point. Diversify, diversify, diversify. Text my name Hugh to 474747. Don't go anywhere. Use your IRA, by the way, or your 401k, and come right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. Listen to the lyric here on the refrain. There are kids all over America who have got all these different things missing from their lives: graduation, sports competition. Keep going, Adam, because the key thing is the refrain. Life goes on, America, and we're doing it at physically safe spaces, but life goes on. It's a serious situation. It is not the end of the world, and the president is so right. We will bounce back. And media always underreacts at the beginning unless you're listening to the Hugh Hewitt show. We've been on this from the beginning. And then they overreact at the end. And we're not at the end, but they just don't. They cannot see beyond their producers' need to get rating. Do not, honestly, media, wake up. Do not oversell the danger. Do not undersell the threat. Try and report what Dr. Birx and Tony Fauci say. Read the markets, and then help political actors judge what to do. That's what I did in my new Washington Post column. It's over at the landing page at WashingtonPost.com. Of course, I'm going to read it to you. Hold on, America. Phase 4 is coming. After the searing partisanship which briefly engulfed the $2 trillion Phase 3 rescue package, which should be voted on this morning, by the way, Congress will need a bill on which almost all Republicans and Democrats can agree, a bill in which the center-right to center-left Americans can embrace. The extremes need not be courted. The center must be rebuilt. Phase 1 was a mere $8.3 billion measure on vaccine research and development. Phase 2, the House Democrats' bill, was deeply disliked by Republicans, but the Senate passed it anyway. Phase 3, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's rescue package, still wending through Congress, again, should pass today, blew the doors off the normally staid Senate. The rhetorical explosions in the world's greatest deliberative body came after Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi injected partisan politics into a relief bill's speedy march towards urgently needed passage. The Democrats' attempts to notch other victories on issues irrelevant to the virus, such as diversity on corporate boards, were quickly exposed. But the country still needs a Phase 4 because it needs to respond to the purveyor of the plague, the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP. Nature produced COVID-19 just as it had in 1918 with the flu pandemic and subsequently with H1N1, Ebola, SARS, and MERS. We all know that the novel coronavirus began in China's Wuhan province. Did Chinese authorities alert the world to the nature of the problem? No. The CCP didn't bother even after it realized it had an epidemic on its hands. The CCP covered up, kept experts away, tossed out journalists, and the world is now paying a catastrophic price. Phase 4 must deal with a regime that is nearly equal to the United States in economic strength and superior in stealth and ruthlessness. A multifaceted approach is necessary. Quote, "The strange new reality has forced our nation into something like a wartime footing," said Mitch McConnell. "A fight has arrived on our shores. We did not seek it, we did not want it, but now we are going to win it. The immediate fight, I say, is the virus. The larger long-term battle is with the regime that allowed the virus to leave its shore. That means vigilance and deterrence. We absolutely must have strong civil rights protections for Asian Americans. We must fund the strategic weapons acquisitions that Beijing notices. We have got to bring back pharmaceutical manufacturing to the United States, and our intel agencies and state and local governments need a lot of money so that we can play offense at the federal level on cyber and defense among the state and local governments. Phase 4 should be about the common defense against the culprit behind the catastrophe." If you want to read the entire column, go to WashingtonPost.com. Come right back. Sonny Bunch is here because it's Friday. Even in a time of pandemic, Sonny Bunch is here. Stay tuned.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by No Safe Spaces.
Welcome back, America. I am Hugh Hewitt, the Mandalorian of the radio. Joined now by the official movie critic of the Hugh Hewitt Show, whom, if we can move the Salem media bureaucracy, will soon be doing a podcast on the universe. Sonny Bunch, who's been doing a kind of warm-up podcast, which I would encourage all of you to see at rebellermedia.com or on Twitter, rebellermedia, or at Sonny Bunch. Hello, Sonny. Good morning.
Hello, Hugh. How are you?
First, I've got to... I'm fine, but I've got to explore this malign partnership you have with Comfortably Smug. I'm now afraid of the combined forces of Smug and Sonny attacking him. And Captain Vandross doesn't like you, and so I just warned him, if you and Smug unleash on him, the minions will overwhelm his Twitter account.
Yeah, Mark, he has his issues with me, so that's fine. But we don't want to have a trouble with Smug. So let's maybe he should back off a little bit.
That's it, and I'm telling you, he's a great Captain Vandross, great patriot, still working on behalf of the country. So give him some space. What are you doing for us today? Because there are no theaters, and you did, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you. You watched Stagecoach. You told everyone to watch Stagecoach. I don't know what to watch next, but you tell me.
Well, so that's the thing, right? We are in this kind of weird space right now where the movies that were in theaters for a brief time are headed to on demand early. I'm looking at Amazon right now, and there's a whole section in the Amazon Prime Video called Prime Video Cinema, and it's got all of these movies, and they've got little tags on them that say early access and in theater purchase and in theater rental. And it's just such a weird moment because for the longest time, the studios refused to do anything like this because they were afraid of losing partnerships with the theaters. But the theaters are all closed right now. So anyway, let's run through some of what's available. And one of the interesting little tweaks we've seen, new to the VOD space this week, you have The Call of the Wild, which is Harrison Ford and the creepy dog, the creepy CGI dog.
I loved it. Go ahead.
But that is available as an in-theater purchase for $14.99. And $14.99 is important here because that is a lower price point than we have seen for some of these other offerings. $14.99 is less than the $19.99 price point to rent The Hunt or The Invisible Man.
Is that because families can watch it? Is The Call of the Wild family-friendly? I think it is.
It's definitely family friendly. I mean, I think the lower price point reflects the fact that people weren't watching it in theaters already anyway. It was it was one of the first big bombs of the year because it was ridiculously expensive. It was an insanely expensive movie. They spent something like $120 million on it. Let's see what else is there. The Way Back, which I reviewed on the show, is also available for an in theater purchase.
The last movie that the fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I saw in a theater, and so that may be the last movie we ever see in a theater. People's habits are changing.
No, the theaters will be back. Bloodshot, which is the Vin Diesel comic book movie. It's based on a Valiant comic from the 1990s. Is available for an in-theater purchase in UHD, though I don't know that you'll be able to watch it in UHD, Hugh, as you know.
I don't know anything about this movie.
Well, so Bloodshot is it's like I said, it's based on a comic book from the 1990s. Sony was hoping this would be a new franchise for Vin Diesel, but when it came out in theaters, it bombed, and not just because of the coronavirus, because it didn't look particularly good. But it's people can check it out now. They can watch it now if they want. And as I said, it's available for purchase in UHD, ultra high def, the 4K. Except I don't know that you'll be able to watch it in 4K because the streaming services across the world have all said that they are going to not allow people to stream things in 4K for the time being to try and alleviate some of the strain on the worldwide web and all of the video conferencing going on and all of the conferencing and all the other stuff going on. All the people at home streaming on Netflix. They don't want to overwhelm the system. And we'll get to Netflix in a minute because that's what I want to talk about most today. Okay. The most interesting thing that I saw was that the new Will Ferrell, Julia Louis-Dreyfus movie. Remember I reviewed that? And did you see it, Hugh?
No, you talked me out of it. I just decided not to go.
Yeah, so it was a remake of Force Majeure. It's basically about a family that almost gets that gets almost caught in an avalanche, and then the family kind of falls apart because the husband was a coward during the event. What's interesting about this is that it is going to be available for rent for only $9.99. So again, like what we are seeing is the price point that was originally set at $19.99. That the studios were like, this is where we can make the money. This is how we can get people, recoup some of those costs. They're already undercutting each other. They're all.
This is fascinating, Sonny.
Down to $9.99. Yeah,
this is fascinating. Have you written about this at rebellermedia.com? Because this shows the market.
Yeah, I've not written about it yet. I'm trying to write about all sorts of things. Like, for instance, Hugh, did you realize that the Woody Allen autobiography came out this week?
Oh yeah, and it's selling like hotcakes, and people love it. I can't believe it.
Right, but the simple fact of the matter is that nobody actually really noticed this. Very few people noticed. You and I noticed this because we're aesthetes. We're very cultured, and we're up to date.
We're geeks, and we're online too much.
But this was a week-long story 4 weeks ago, right? Like, oh, how dare a publisher do anything with Woody Allen? How dare them ignore the victims? How dare this? And there was walkouts, and there was outrage on Twitter. And the book actually came out. It literally came out on Monday, and nobody has said peep about it because we live in a post frivolity age, and that's a frivolous exercise in outrage and anger, and we don't have time for that anymore because we're.
Sonny, a comment because I want to hear what you say about Netflix, but I want you to keep an eye on this because you are a shrewd observer. I think Twitter may collapse in the course of this because people realize it's not real, it's fake, and it has nothing to do with the actual reactions of a significant segment of American population. But I reserve that. I need to know what you tell me to do about Netflix.
Netflix. So Netflix is a great resource during this time, obviously, even if they won't let you stream in ultra high def. But I would say the thing that's most interesting right now is a show called The Tiger King. So this is it is a documentary it's a documentary series. It's a limited series documentary. I think it's 7 or 8 episodes about people who own big cats. So lions, tigers, lynxes, bobcats, etc. It's about the people who own these big cats and run these like kind of rinky-dink roadside zoos where everyone can come and pet the big cats and play with the kits and all that, the kittens, and I don't know what you call a lion, cubs, I guess. So
what you call is a predator. That's what you call them.
Well, and look, I'm only 3 episodes into this series, so I've not watched the whole thing yet. But in the first 3 episodes, here are some of the things that we have seen. We've seen giant cats, obviously, fascinating creatures on their own. We've also seen polygamists. There's one of these guys has basically a harem. He runs a cult. And all of the women kind of, are attracted to him because of his giant cats. We've also seen a gay polygamist, a man who has 2 husbands and is involved in the big cat scene, and a woman who probably murdered her husband so she could keep her big cat zoo. I mean, this is literally it's the most fascinating slice of weird Americana that I have seen in some time. It is really an interesting thing. It is not just about big cats. I saw the trailer for it and I was like, okay, this looks kind of interesting, I guess, but that it totally undersells what's going on in this show. I highly recommend it for everyone. It's fascinating.
So the desire to own a big pet is an early indicator of fundamentals different. You are going to be a very different person.
So, social difference, shall we say?
Social difference, yeah.
Yeah. It is a marker that you are not meant for normal society. That is for sure. No, I mean, look, it's a fascinating look at these people who are all kind of weird and broken in their own way, and they're all trying to figure out how to make it through the world, and they're also all dealing with the fact that they have this ridiculous obsession and this ridiculous hobby, and it's more than a hobby to them; it's a way of life. I find it totally fascinating. I highly recommend it. Like I said, it's called The Tiger King. It's on Netflix. It's pretty solid. I'm definitely recommending it.
Sonny, Not gonna watch that. I got Peaky Blinders to finish. I've never watched the Wire. I've got to catch up. I've never even seen Breaking Bad. I've got so many things ahead of the Tiger King that I read. What am I going to do? I need to. Have they made David Copperfield into a miniseries yet?
Reading, right? Like this is so. When I heard about the Woody Allen book, I was like, okay, well that sounds interesting. I would definitely like to read it. But the idea of reading anything longer than about an 800-word news article right now makes me want to jump off a bridge just because I don't have any time. It's funny. My wife last night was like, "So you're gonna set your alarm to wake up for Hugh show?" And I was like, "Oh, that's right. Tomorrow's Friday," because I'd forgotten what day it is. I'd forgotten
that is happening.
This whole working from home, having my kids around 24 hours a day. It is messing with my sense of time and date. I don't know how long we can keep this up, Hugh. And I don't mean this as like we need to get back to work to save the Dow Jones. I just mean I don't know how long I can keep doing this and stay sane. I need my routine. I need my rhythm.
I think you'll be fine. I like your bunker videos. How many of those do you? We've got to get the podcast going. Have you heard from our vast Salem bureaucracy?
I have not. The vast Salem bureaucracy is a little bit slow on the trigger, but I understand.
Oh my God! No, we are like FEMA after Katrina, right? When we get going, we get going. But honest to goodness, because we need Sonny Bunch, rebellermedia.com. By the way. Are you still free to the public at rebellermedia.com?
We are. Yep. If you go to rebellermedia.com, you click on the originals. You're going to hit a paywall, but you can do 2 free months right now. That's our gift to the people during this coronavirus crisis. There's just a little box up in the left hand corner. If you go to the homepage, it'll show you where to sign up. I'll tweet it out here in a minute. Maybe you can retweet it.
And very quickly, I've got one question a week for Sonny Bunch. In Alien versus Predator, who did you root for?
I rooted for. I have always been a bigger fan of Predator. I mean, Alien is just the aliens are just bugs. They're just big bugs that breed and kill. But the Predator has he's got a code. He's a hunter. So
So the Predator is Tony Fauci, and the alien is the coronavirus.
Yeah, something like that.
All right, just checking. Sonny Bunch on Twitter, Rebeller Media on Twitter, rebellermedia.com, and I promise you the podcast will be in the universe someday soon. If I had a producer, we would go out with Someday Soon by Judy Collins. Thank you, Sonny Bunch. Time for relieffactor.com. Did my 7 miles, hear me beating my chest, 7 miles yesterday. Why? Because it was beautiful, and there was nobody on my particular path. There were 8 people or so. Take my relieffactor.com. I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. Now, I have got a bum back. I've got degenerative disc disease. People know that. And so I have to do all sorts of things to make sure I do not take the wrong step, or like I did in Hawaii, or anything bad. But this is a nice level path. It was just great, beautiful. You need to be out doing that at least 20 minutes a day, at least 30 minutes a day, especially as Sonny just said, when you're losing your mind during the not quarantine but self-isolating. You need relieffactor.com. You need to be moving. Don't go anywhere. Tarzana Joe is next on the Hugh Hewitt Friday edition show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Job Creators Network.
Joined now by the poet laureate of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Even in a time of virus, Tarzana Joe continues to rhyme, and we need it. Hello, Joe.
Poetry is essential. It's vital. It's important. The idea of thought when you're in panic is most important because that stops the panic. I think, I hope. I braved the L.A. earthquake that tossed me from my bed. A TV bounced across the room. It barely missed my head. I breathed the L.A. fires and faced them without fear. Which one? I can't recall because they burn now every year. And in my youth, when I flew west in search of peace and quiet, a jury said not guilty, and I landed in a riot. All of these were frightening. Believe me, I was frightened. But soon the dark clouds parted, and the skies above me brightened. I had a certain confidence of how things would be going. But now what's most concerning is the feeling of not knowing. Oh, to have a mirror on how long this one will last. To see our 2-week future, look 2 weeks in the past. You shook a hand in friendship. You kissed your kids goodbye. Now all alone you wring your hands and want to wonder why. Some turn their hope to government. Oh my, I think that's odd. The same cast their derision on those who turn to God. But if we hear the founders, who ought to have their say, aligning God and government, there is a middle way. Will manna fall from heaven? Will man fall once again? May all of us allegiance pledge to do our parts. Amen. That's Surviving by Tarzana Joe.
Joe, our audience loves you, as I do, and I was wondering, there's relief in the stimulus for contractors. I don't know if there's relief for poets.
No, but I will survive. There's a way, of course, of helping out your neighborhood poet. You can go to Amazon and buy one of my publications that only hurts when I rhyme, or the second best of Tarzana Joe. After you've finished the entire C.J. Box canon and you have something you need to read, those 2 books will help out.
You can also forward commission your anniversary or wedding poem. Honestly, you can. Go to Joe at tarzanajoe@reagan.com. He served us for 20 years. May he do so for the next 8, which we just signed up for. Tarzana Joe, thank you, my friend. Oh, it's good. It's good. We'll be annoying you for 8 more years.
Whee!
Be well.
Bye.
I also want to say what Joe just said. There are things, do your part in his poem. Food for the poor could be your part, because even as the world collapses into chaos in some places, and I think Secretary of State Pompeo said yesterday, Venezuela, North Korea, failed states are going to be very ravaged by this. Food for the Poor is working in their neighboring states like Guatemala to feed people. And we're in the final days of my campaign to rush food and clean water to children in Guatemala through our friends at Food for the Poor. All you have to do is go to HughHewitt.com. Some of you have been thinking about saying, maybe I can't spare the $100 this year. Yes, you can. You really can't. Our economy's going to bounce back. We're going to get relief checks in the mail. I don't know how to move you if I haven't moved you yet, but it's Lent, where you're dispensed from the Friday abstinence if you're a Catholic. But don't dispense with the need for almsgiving. Food for the Poor. Go to the Feed Starving Families banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Literally save some lives, or call 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. Whether it's $25 or $250 or $2,500, God bless you. Let me also remind you that if you're a small business, you want to know what is going on, check in with jobcreatorsnetwork.com. jobcreatorsnetwork.com. If you own a small business, they are making their way through the relief bill. They are working on phase 4. They will be following every regulatory relief that is there. jobcreatorsnetwork.com exists for you. Also want to recommend to you, if you want to buy something for anyone right now, besthotgrill.com. They've got a 15% off coupon during this crisis, because they know a lot of people are staying at home and they're trying to figure out a grill for the first time, and maybe they don't want to. They can get a hibachi, the best hibachi in the business. Get ready, because it's going to come back. Tailgating is going to come back. And you get the real grill, which we're going to do as a homecoming present for people. Solaire, besthotgrills.com. All you need to do is go to besthotgrill.com. Of course they coped. They're run by United States Naval Academy grad Rhett Rasmussen, and of course they coped. They've organized, they're physically spacing. physically distancing. They're running the shift the right way. They're making grills right in America. They're one of the people that the president has in mind when people want to go back to work. Rhett figured it out, and they're the best grills made in the world. The best grills made in the world are made at besthotgrill.com. And if you figured out, well, I'm going to learn how to grill, do so on a Best Hot Grill. They'll deliver it. You'll save some money. Finally, Sonny didn't mention this, but No Safe Spaces is available to watch for a limited time at nosafespaces.com. Number one political documentary of 2019, Adam Carolla, Dennis Prager, has a 99% audience rating at Rotten Tomatoes. No Safe Spaces is a great option for the stay-at-home time. Finally, daybreakinsider.com. It's our daily dose of what happened overnight. You want a center-right perspective on the world from Salem Media, daybreakinsider.com. Go and get that, daybreakinsider.com. And come back. I'm going to talk with Acting Secretary of the Navy Modley, and Representative Greg Walden. Newsmakers always. Jim Talent. They're all ahead on hour 2 of today's Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Birch Gold Group.
Morning, Glory America, bonjour, hi, Canada, across our 400 affiliates. I am Hugh Hewitt, whether you are listening online via the podcast or live right now in your car, one of the few people going to work on the streets. I'm glad you are joining us because I've got Representative Greg Walden of Oregon, one of our stalwarts over the years. Congressman Walden, how are you? How's the family? How's everyone in your circle?
Well, thank you, Hewitt. We're doing just fine. We're, sheltering in place, doing what we need to do to follow all the public health standards. I'm actually standing outside looking up at the U.S. Capitol. It's 9 o'clock. We'll be on the House floor with this package to speed help to our communities, our healthcare responders, our workers, our seniors, and try and get help on the way to the American people.
Now, it was deemed necessary to try and get a quorum because one member of Congress, Congressman Massey, for whatever strange reason, was going to vote no on a unanimous consent. Will you get to a quorum?
We'll get to a quorum, and I have great respect for people who stand on principle, but, a principle is that cement truck's supposed to stop when you're in the crosswalk. But if that guy's on the phone, you might want to yield once in a while because you're not going to win that fight. We'll get through this today, and we'll get this aid to the American people. I have respect for Constitution, obviously, and people who stand up, but boy, we're in a very, very rare crisis right now. People need this help. We'll get it to them.
It's the first time in 100 years. And I want people to understand a 100-year event, though, doesn't mean it's going to be the only event in 100 years. I think we've got to do more preparation, and maybe now people will finally take more seriously what I've been a pandemic nut for a long time, and so I've been covering this since January because I read The Great Influenza. I served on a public health board for 17 years.
Yep.
I know what it means.
Yep.
I am urging the offering of public health bonds, the equivalent of war bonds. I think the president likes the idea. Mike McCall likes the idea. Some senators like the idea because Americans want to help. Did you see Drew Brees donated $5 million yesterday?
Isn't that amazing? I'll tell you, Americans are coming together from sewing circles in my communities that are making masks because we didn't have enough in time. I talked to one of my county commissioners using the juvenile department to make the face masks for a hospital, the plastic ones. I mean, the people are coming together. President Trump and his team have done an amazing job freeing up long overdue regulations that needed to be loosened, protecting public safety along the way, but expediting the ability for ingenuity and innovation in America to do what we do best. That's address a crisis, find a solution, and get to the other side.
Now, I don't know if it's Ways and Means or Energy and Commerce, but you folks could move a bond package. I really do believe in World War II, 85 million Americans bought $189 billion in war bonds. That's the equivalent of, I think, $2.6 trillion today. We could fund the whole public health expansion of capacity, which we don't need most of the time, but we need when we surge on a bug.
Well, that's certainly a good idea to look at because we're going to need to find a way to pay for this enormous package we're putting forward and leave in place exactly the kind of health delivery system that can surge in emergency. The South Koreans learned from SARS. That's why they were a little bit faster at having the test capability. Look, on the Energy and Commerce Committee, we've been looking at this for a long time and taking action and banging the bell. The other thing that needs to happen, Hugh, we've got to fix our supply chain vulnerabilities, whether it's for drugs, whether it's for medical supplies, or our telecommunications network. We need to get smart, and we need to do it now.
Well, I have a Washington Post column up today on this very issue. Phase 4 has got to look. Phase 1 was the vaccine. Phase 2, the House bill. Phase 3, the Senate bill. Phase 4 has got to look at the fact that the Communist Chinese Party screwed us. They screwed the world. And we have to be ready. We have to respond to that, protect Asian Americans, of course, protect minorities.
Absolutely.
But we've got to get our pharmaceutical industry home. We've got to get our nuclear industry home, Congressman Walden. We do not. They lead the world now. The Chinese and the Russians lead the world. We are not building any. We are not enriching. We are not processing. We are not mining. That's our other critical industry.
But I would tell you, when Republicans were in charge of the House and I was chairman of the committee, we moved legislation to expedite the approval processes, maintaining safety guardrails for new innovative nuclear energy development, small-scale nuclear development, which is essential for the future. And we lead in America on that. You got NuScale from my state of Oregon. moving through that process now, showing great signs. I mean, you're right. We got to bring manufacturing jobs here. And no president's ever led on this like President Trump has. I mean, he's been sounding this alarm from the beginning.
Your colleague Mike Gallagher and Senator Cotton have introduced a bill on the pharmaceutical repatriation of basic manufacturing via devices like CapEx write-offs and things like that. Do you think your Democratic colleagues are agreed that we have to bring home the infrastructure of response and build it and do so in an immediate fashion?
Hugh, I do. My friend and colleague, Democrat from Silicon Valley, Anna Eshoo, chairs the Health Subcommittee. She and I have, and Susan Brooks from Indiana and others have been saying this is what needs to happen. Now, you may want, let's be smart about the supply chain. We want those jobs here. That's good. We want the security here. That's essential. But remember, we also had a problem with the hurricane that hit Puerto Rico. Turns out that's where all our saline was made. So we need to be smart about, even though it's here doesn't mean it's secure in terms of supply chain vulnerability. So let's put that first. Let's work with our allies and friends, and let's make sure that we're able to take care of Americans when a catastrophe, and understand this is a natural thing that's happened with the coronavirus. What happens if it's not? What happens if it is a biowarfare attack?
Yeah, and deadlier. And what if it comes back and it iterates deadlier as happened in 1918? I've been telling people, and Dr. Fauci said there is no science one way or the other. We don't know if it's going to mutate weaker or we don't know if it's going to mutate deadlier over the summer. That's what happened in 1918. We have to build up, and I do think we need phase 4, and we need to pay for this. That's why I keep coming back to bonds. We have to pay for this.
And I think Americans would step up and do that. And this is the time. This is the time to knock off the partisan bickering and do what's right for the country. Step up, and we got plenty of reports that tell us we're vulnerable on supply chain. We need to be able to pay for these things, and there's a way to go forward. And I just think we're the most innovative country on the planet. Sure, we've got friends and allies around the world who can be helpful, but they all turn to us in the end, and there's a reason. Because we do it right. But we have gotten lethargic, and we can't let that happen in the government anymore. We've got to fix this, and we've got to do it now.
John Barry in The Great Influenza, this is written 14 years ago, said we will have no excess capacity because of efficiency-driven hospital systems. He was right.
Yep.
And we need excess capacity, even hospitals that are built and not open unless you need them, that sit on military bases or other places that are secure, like the hospital ship. I think we can build that. I think Democrats would support that. That's like a public works program. And if we sell bonds, I'll buy some. If Michael Bloomberg bought $13 billion worth of bonds instead of ads, we'd all be better off.
Hey, if he spent $400 million doing that, But let's think about this from another perspective too. The federal government can't be the solution to all of this, because at the end of the day, public health gets delivered on the ground in our communities. So we need to have partners at the state and county level who, by the way, have balanced budgets or surpluses, and they need to be a bigger partner in this solution, because it's obvious in many areas they were not staffed up, they were not prepared, even though we send federal money to the states just to keep this system intact in case you have a big problem like we're having now. So we've been doing that, but it's not adequate, obviously, as we see now.
Well, I want to salute you and Kevin McCarthy and the other Republicans in the House. You appear to put down your swords. Nancy Pelosi picked up hers at exactly the wrong moment. The blowback was intense. Did you feel it? Did the Democrats feel the blowback?
Well, nobody's in town, but I'm sure they did, because they yielded immediately. There's virtually nothing in this bill that they added to. I mean, the agreement that was worked out over last weekend held all the way through this in the end. I mean, that's what's so frustrating. I talked to one of my colleagues over in the Senate who said after Chuck Schumer brought everything to a halt, he kind of sat on the floor and smirked while Mitch McConnell was talking. It's like, this is not fun and games, people. People are getting sick. They're dying. They expect us to do the job and not engage in political theater.
Well, good luck on getting your quorum this morning, Congressman Greg Walden. Follow him on Twitter at Rep. Greg Walden. Go talk to people about equivalent of war bonds. We need war bonds. We need to be allowed to help the country help the
There you
sick
go.
people. Be well, Congressman. I'll be right back, America. Don't forget as well, jobcreatorsnetwork.com. That's where you share your stories that get the attention of the members of Congress. Let them know that they can advocate for you. JobCreatorsNetwork.com. Our small businesses are too big to fail. We need to get there and get you signed up and be part of a new voice for sanity in Washington, D.C. JobCreatorsNetwork.com. Stay tuned. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. Morning, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. You know the news is grim, but it is not the end of the world. It is a very serious situation. Dr. Burke said last night, please, no stories about lacking ventilators. We don't. No stories about triage for fatalities. We're not there. We're not, God forbid we get there. We're not there. Stop scaring people. Physically distance. Take good measures. Be smart. Be smart. The business story of the day brought to you by Birch Gold. You ought to be diversified. If you made some money in a bond fund, move some of it to gold. If you happen to have held one of the stocks that went up this week, you made some money. You bought Amazon when it was very low and it's almost back up to its high. Diversify into gold. Birchgold.com. Do it in your 401k or your IRA. They store physical gold for you. Text my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 474747. All right? That's very easy to do. They'll tell you about you want to buy physical gold. Text my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 474747. Overnight, Japan was up almost 4%, Hong Kong 0.5%. But I don't know if the rally will hold. It's been a huge rally. The market factors in everything. It adjusts for risks. It is not the wisdom of crowds. It simply adjusts for risk. The risk has gone down as the response has gone up, and that's very good news. But we're all going to stay home for at least a few more days, maybe a month. No Safe Spaces, by the way, available to watch for a limited time at nosafespaces.com. Number one political documentary of 2019, done by my buddy Prager, Adam Carolla. Go watch nosafespaces.com. When we come out of this, we need to be able to talk about it sanely. What else can I tell you to do? Well, of course, food for the poor. It's the last day of my campaign. If you have not yet, during this Lenten season, given to the lost and the least who are abroad, feed starving children, banner is over at hughhewitt.com at the very top. Whether it's $10 or $10,000, your gifts are terrific. Don't forget your churches. Don't forget your colleges. Don't forget the military organization that you support. You got to be generous in this period of time. You simply have to do. It's got to be what you need to do is remember everyone that you've helped. And by the way, support the people you've always supported online, like my buddy Rasmussen over at besthotgrills.com. He's not paying me to tell you this. He's a sponsor of the show, but not this. I just am amazed at what he did. They came up with a 15% coupon. They staggered their work hour. It's the best grill in America, period. It sells itself. But he said, okay, we got to adapt. People are staying home. Are they going to buy a grill? You betcha. People are going to buy grills. They wish they had a besthotgrill.com right now. So go get one. Go get one. It'll be delivered to your house. You'll learn how to grill during this period of time. Do a bunch of good stuff for yourself. Finally, andrewandtodd.com. Again, they're not paying me to tell you this. I'm just telling you. The 10-year Treasury is still below 1%. Unbelievable. The 30-year Treasury at 1.4. That's not going to last. I don't know if the markets have yet organized effectively to refinance. They are allowing you to purchase real estate. I'm not sure they're allowing you to refinance, but you are in a position with andrewandtodd.com at Sierra Pacific Mortgage to get to the starting line. Go do that. 888-888-1172. Get everything done. If you're going to need money, and the government, I don't know if the government let you take it out of your retirement account. I haven't been able to read the bill. It's 800 pages long yet. But you can get it out of your house if you need it to survive. And the place to do that is andrewandtodd.com. They'll do it quickly. They're pros with Sierra Pacific Mortgage, are the best in the business. And if you're looking to invest in real estate because the market, you just don't like it, go to them and they'll give you a realtor anywhere in the country to go find you an investment property. In Alexandria, they send you to Gordon Wood. In Seattle, they send you to somebody else. In L.A., they send you to somebody else. In New York City, well, no one's buying a house in New York City right now, at least not many people. But andrewandtodd.com, coming back with the acting secretary of the Navy. The Teddy Roosevelt's pulled into Guam. The Navy was prepared. I talked with him about it on February 28th. I talked with Secretary Modly about the Navy being ready for coronavirus. They are ready. He's doing a hell of a job. So is Admiral Gilday. Stay tuned. We'll tell you about it right after the break on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of The Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by No Safe Spaces.
Welcome back, America. I am Hugh Hewitt, joined now by Acting Secretary of the Navy, Thomas Modly. Secretary Modly, welcome back. A month ago, we were talking about the coronavirus in the Navy. You were prepared then. Now the Teddy Roosevelt is in Guam with many cases. Can you give us a status update?
Good morning, Hugh. Thanks for having me on. And as you mentioned, the Teddy Roosevelt has pulled into Guam and is tied up pierside there. We're restricting motion of the sailors off the ship only to the pier area, so they won't be allowed to sort of wander around in Guam. We are testing every single sailor on that ship, and we're going through that process right now. And all the sailors that we have so far that have tested positive have been either sort of asymptomatic positive tests or sailors who are exhibiting very mild symptoms. So that's what we found. We don't have anyone that's seriously ill. In fact, the folks that we took off the ship a few days ago, none of them were even hospitalized. They're just sort of in isolation right now in quarantine. So we're just monitoring it very closely and working our way through making sure we have all the sailors tested.
Now, I believe Stanley Bryant is the CEO of the Teddy Roosevelt. I'm not sure. I'm always a little bit confused. Are you in communication with the ship, or are you leaving that to CNO Gilday to do?
Well, it's the CNO is obviously, this is his chain of command. He's talking to them, but also Admiral Aquilino, who is the Pacific Fleet Commander, is very engaged, and I spoke with him yesterday, and he's in constant communication with them.
How long do you expect the TR to be out of the fleet? Because obviously it's one of our carriers that's supposed to be deployed in deterring bad guys around the world. We need it at sea, right?
Right. Well, and thanks for asking the question, because she's not out of commission in any sense. She's in port right now, so this testing can take place. If there were a reason for her to go into action, she could easily go do that. We would just go, and so we certainly, she's close enough to some potential trouble spots that she could certainly mobilize and go quickly. But right now, we're just using the abundance of caution to make sure that all the sailors on board are healthy.
How long will it take to test a 5,200 sailor ship?
Well, the inherent capability we had on the ship was to test about 200 people on the ship a day. However, because of this particular circumstance, we're flying in more test kits from other large deck ships that we have, and also sending certain samples, a number of samples off the ship so that we can get responses more quickly.
Can you surge personnel to Navy Hospital Guam, which is a great big facility? People have to understand. I think my brother-in-law was born at Guam because my father-in-law, colonel in the Marine Corps, was stationed there. It's a big hospital. There's a lot of capacity at Guam, but they might not have the personnel to test an entire ship.
Well, the hospital's not the one that's doing the testing. Where the testing is taking place on the ship itself, and then also the test kits that we don't have the capacity to test on the ship are being sent out to other facilities across the Department of Defense to be tested. So, and as I mentioned before, so far none of these cases have required hospitalization. So the hospital in Guam really doesn't have any patients from the TR in any of the rooms there.
Do you? I'm glad to hear that. Do you have a date certain when the TR will be able to go back to its assigned mission?
No, I don't have a date on that right now, Hugh. I think we're just working through this as quickly as we possibly can. And as I mentioned before, if there is an issue that they need to go to sea, she will go to sea and respond if she needs to.
But 5,200 people are a lot of people to test if you don't have people who can do the kind of tests that, for example, Vice President Pence described so accurately. It's a pinch. It takes a while. You got to get the results back. You got to process the tests. Are you surging people there via C-130 or whatever to get the ship back out to sea?
We are, as of right now, we're not surging any additional people to go to the ship. What we're doing is surging the amount of test kits that we can get on the ship, and also surging our capacity to send them out to be tested so that we can get through this more quickly. As you know, we have, as you mentioned, over 5,000 people on that ship at a pace of 200 a day. That could take 25 days. We're obviously, that's not acceptable, so we're driving towards a quicker ability to do that by utilizing some of the other testing facilities we have.
Now, this is a little geek speak, and I'm really out of my league, but I talked to Ward and other people. How long until your pilots lose their qualifications? Because people don't understand how well trained these F-18. I don't think they're F-35s on the Theodore Roosevelt. I might be wrong. But there are all sorts of aircraft, and they're all qualified to fly, but they got to fly to stay qualified. When do you start losing your quals?
That's a good question, Hugh, and I'm quite certain that the Air Wing is thinking through all of those issues. I don't have an answer for you on that, but I'm as part of this all the planning and the contingencies that are being thought through on this, all those are being considered, and obviously we won't get into a situation where that is a problem.
All right, let me widen the scope. You were very prepared a month ago for this to hit. How is the Navy doing? It was inevitable. You have all these people in a small, contained ship, even though it's a massive ship with 50 to 100 people, but all throughout the Navy, you got bases, you got ships going all around the world, and they can't stop. They protect freedom of navigation. They protect America. We can't stop. How is your preparation plan surviving the fog of war? Is famously said, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. The enemy's the virus. How's your plan surviving?
Well, I think we're doing okay. I think we're obviously, just like everybody else in this crisis, we're having to adjust a lot on the fly as we learn more about the virus and how it's behaving. And as you mentioned, we've been looking at this actually since before I spoke to you about it on the phone. So late January, we were already thinking through contingencies and what we would do, getting guidance out to the ships and to the COs so that they understood how to do this, how the crews should be careful, and what they would do in certain contingencies. So I think we're prepared as we can be, and obviously you're right. It's almost unavoidable, and we have to just work our way through it. And I've asked this. I've been asking the CNO and the Commandant to look at both the Navy and Marine Corps beyond just our own operational challenges that we have, but the nation needs us as well. And I've asked them to think very, very creatively right now about how the Navy and Marine Corps team can assist the nation in the broader mission that we have here. And you're seeing that come to play now with the Mercy and the Comfort, which I asked the question way back in early February: how do we engage this in case we engage those ships in case we need to engage them? And I think some of that prompting got them ready quickly. And so this weekend, those ships are going to start arriving and helping out the nation in a way that we probably didn't anticipate 6 months ago.
I've got to say, my hat is off to you, the CNO, the Commandant of the Marine Corps. You are prepared. And I am astonished that the hospital ship in Norfolk is ready to go. I know how long it takes to get a ship ready to go. I thought it would be weeks. What did they do? How did they get this thing ready to go?
Well, I'm going down to see the Comfort tomorrow, and I'm going to ask a lot of those questions. I asked the question back in February about how long would it take, and the regular maintenance schedule that they had didn't have it ready until later in the summer or early fall, and that just wasn't good enough. And so they put their thinking caps on and came up with creative ways to get through this more quickly. And it took an all hands on deck effort by the shipyard as well as the Navy, and very, very proud of what they've done so far. And I know the whole country will be even more proud of them when they get up to New York and start helping out directly in this crisis.
I've only been on a few ships in my life, Secretary Modly, but they're always clean. Nevertheless, this virus lives on surfaces a long time. Has the Navy tripled, quadrupled, quintupled its cleaning efforts?
Those are part of the protocols that we sent out quite a while ago in terms of cleaning up using different types of cleaners. One of the things that we found is a lot of these green, environmentally acceptable cleaners aren't so good in terms of cleaning the virus. So we're kind of going back to bleach and other things that have traditionally been known to work in these situations, and so we're doing a lot of that on the ships. As you can imagine, the effort right now on the Teddy Roosevelt to clean up spaces where we know these sailors were, and as I mentioned, we're doing this testing, but the testing is not random. We're doing very forensic-based testing to understand who these sailors came in contact with. Those are the first ones that we're testing, and so right now it has not been isolated to certain areas of the ship. It's in all different areas of the ship. Luckily, nothing in the food service area, and so that's encouraging. But no, we're.
Have you lost any of your command structure on the ship to the virus?
Not as far as I know right now. So.
All right, I've got to ask because the last time you were on, you made some news. I didn't even know you made news. You announced that it looked like the selection of the new frigate was going to be advanced. Do you have a date for that yet, Secretary Modly?
I don't have a date, but we're looking to, as I mentioned before, they were looking to try and do this in the latter part of this fiscal year, so end of the summer, and I think we'll be significantly ahead of that.
By significantly June?
I would hope so. I don't want to say anything that would sort of compromise where we are in the process, but I think that it's actually, we will hopefully have the ability to do that, before June.
When the president comes down to see the hospital ship in Norfolk, I assume you'll be with him. Will you review with him then the plan for 355 ships? And I mean, taking the TR out even for a week shows we are just thin on carriers. We just are.
Well, that'll be up to him whether he wants to talk about that with me during this time. I mean, frankly, I think most of his attention, as it should be, is on this crisis and helping the nation work its way through this crisis. So whatever I can do to help him understand what the Navy and the Marine Corps can do to help in that mission, I think that's probably what we'll be talking about. However, I'm always ready to talk about that other issue, as you know. So I'm always ready to talk about it. It's something I'm very passionate about, that I've been trying to get the Navy to think about more creatively. And so, yeah, I'll be ready to do that if he wants to talk about it.
Let me talk about the 60-day hold in place. Are soldiers who are deployed in combat zones covered by that? I mean, people who have been at high tempo operating, are they going to be another 60 days? I think of your naval special warfare people. They operate at such a tempo, as described by General McChrystal in his books. I can't imagine keeping them in place for an additional 60 days.
Well, there is a lot of discretion on this as well. I mean, there is a blanket hold on movements. However, the commanders do have the ability to waive some of these in certain circumstances, so they're looking at those on a case-to-case basis to determine whether or not people need to be rotated out for those types of reasons that you just cited.
Generally speaking, last question, is the United States Navy at sea with the same amount of power as it was before the virus raised its deadly head?
We're absolutely out there. We're absolutely ready for anything that comes our way. I will say that we sort of scaled back on port visits. We've scaled back on some exercises, but the ships are still out there, and they're manned and crewed with the best sailors in the world, and they're ready to do what they need to do if they have to.
Acting Secretary of the Navy, Modly, thank you. By the way, I hate saying acting secretary. I was acting director of OPM once long ago, and it just means you got all of the responsibility of being the Secretary of the Navy, and they put acting in front of it. It makes me crazy. When I was director of OPM, they said acting director. It just makes me crazy, but I got to play by the rules. Acting Secretary Modly, thank you. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be right back with Jim Talent. We're going to talk about this virus. We're going to talk about the Navy. I think we just made some more news. I think we're going to get a frigate selection in June, which is great. We need that. We need that ship. We need that production. We need that selection made. I don't know who's going to win. We need someone to win that competition, and we need to get it out there. You need to win the competition to stay healthy. ReliefFactor.com will help you do that. I take it in the first hour, remind you twice a day, if you're going to go out and walk today, if you're going to do anything that's different, your muscle groups will be different. You need to be on top of it. ReliefFactor.com is what you need to use. $19.95 gets you started. $19.95 gets you a 3-week starter pack. Please get it. And at the same time, support all those military families who are disrupted. 60 days extra in theater is going to disrupt a lot of family lives. HonorBoundCoffee.com. If you get your coffee through HonorBoundCoffee.com, you will be supporting every military family in America because they're supporting the military wives. They're supporting the Injured Marine Semper Fi Fund, which also supports other services. So ReliefFactor.com, HonorBoundCoffee.com. Come right back. Jim Talent is next. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, joined now by former United States Senator Jim Talent. Senator Talent, the breaking news is that British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has tested positive for the virus. He has assured people that his symptoms are mild. He is self-isolating, will continue to lead the government's response in video conference. But boy, did that bring it home. Everybody is at risk.
Well, that's very true. I love the rundown, by the way, you, and the quotes from Dr. Birx. So, what she's saying is, look, either the disease is less contagious than we thought, or what she's hinting at, or is less virulent than we thought. It's beginning to look like it has to be one or the other, right? Either fewer people have it, or it's not hospitalizing as many people as we were afraid it might, and that's good news. Bob Graham and I did a report on this, a study on this, almost 10 years ago, as you know. And we said at the time the three biggest areas of concern were we needed to be able to go from bug to drug faster, to get medical countermeasures faster, we needed better diagnostic techniques, and we needed better medical management. And those are the three problems we're struggling. We are now spending a lot of money and a lot of effort to, in essence, buying back time with money, and we're beginning to solve, I think, all three of those problems. So all of that is pretty good news.
It's kind of remarkable to see the collective scientific genius of the world focused on the epidemiology of this virus and figuring it out in real time. I mean, everything is focused on it, unlike 1918 to 20, and the advances are astonishing.
That's right. And one of the things I've been saying is we don't know, and the public health people, I mean, the brilliant people who are the most knowledgeable about this don't know what happens when basically the world's whole life science sector focuses on one set of problems. And not just the life science, the manufacturers, all the innovators, everybody is focusing on this problem. So, look, this is a handful. This has hurt us badly already, and the pain is going to go on for a while. But there is good news, or at least reason for optimism on the horizon. And so people just need to keep calm and carry on without understating the danger of this. And boy, the next time you know what, we're going to be ready for the pandemic after this one. We're going to be ready out the kazoo. I love watching.
Although on this point, Senator Talent, I believe that the president ought to launch the equivalent of war bonds, because we need to build excess capacity that is not used except in situations like this. And
that's right.
We could do that. I mean, Drew Brees gave $5 million yesterday to relief. He'd buy $5 million of war bonds or the equivalent of war bonds or beat the bug bonds. And we need to build that excess capacity and then shutter it just to be ready to throw it open.
Well, I'll sign up. I'm not going to buy $5 million, but I mean, I'll buy pandemic preparation bonds or whatever they want to call them. Absolutely. I mean, this has been a vulnerability for some time, but at the same time, it is both true that we had vulnerabilities, but also that I think we were the best prepared in the whole world because we have a great public health infrastructure. Another thing Dr. Birx pointed out that's really important is we're a big country, much bigger than like the European countries, and so this is going to be very uneven across the country, which means we have capacity in upstate New York, for example, that can help in New York City. This is not going to hit everywhere at the same rate at the same time, and our public health infrastructure has a tradition of mutual support, okay? So we can move resources around.
It's like a fire. Do you know, in the fire season in California, crews come from all over the country to help. I think the same thing's going to happen here.
It is happening here, and what the president's letter makes perfect sense. That he sent. He said, "Look, and the better diagnostic testing we get, obviously, the easier this is going to be. In fact, if we solve any one of those three problems, I think this pandemic becomes manageable. If we can have home testing or even point of care quick testing, so we know quickly who has it now, who has had it." Okay, and who doesn't have it but could get it, then all these restrictive measures we can target them much more precisely. Kim, look, I could let my kids see my mother-in-law. If I knew that they didn't have the disease, they could come into the house and see their 89-year-old grandmother, which would be kind of nice, right? So, I mean, if we can solve any one of these three areas, we can get back to something much closer to normal.
I hope they reassemble the team that oversaw, or that the new Senate reassembles what you and Graham oversaw, because we need to study this to make it ready for the next one. Because, God forbid, a 100-year event doesn't mean there won't be another event for 100 years. It just means over the course of 1,000 years, it occurs 10 times. The next one could be next year.
Yeah, they're almost, and plus and maybe we can talk about this at a subsequent interview. What have the radical groups around the world, the nuts, and the people who hate everybody, basically, what lesson have they learned from this? If they want to hit the world with something, they're going to use a bioagent, right? And you can make viruses,
my toxicologist buddy has told me for years, it's not nukes, it's not chemicals, it's bioagents. That's what we got to worry about.
That's what Bob Graham and I said 10 years ago. It's been my biggest concern.
Senator Jim Talent, follow him on Twitter at Jim Talent at the Bipartisan Policy Center. Thank you, my friend. Coming right back, Dr. Larry Arnn on Churchill in Wartime. The Hillsdale Dialogue continues, even in a time of pandemic. We bring you what you need to know and updates. Boris Johnson has the bug, but he is okay. He's self-isolating for the time being. Say a prayer for all the leadership, everybody, actually, and I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Now let us turn to Churchill because now let us turn to Churchill. Morning Glory, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. The Hillsdale Dialogue is upon us, the last radio hour of the week. Earlier this week, Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College, all things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu, joined me to talk about leadership in wartime. Both Abraham Lincoln and Winston Churchill. I've already played for you the Lincoln Dialogue. Here's our conversation about Winston Churchill. Now, let us turn to Churchill because I believe the situation is more similar to a 20th century crisis than a 19th century crisis, if only in our ability to communicate, even more an exponentially faster means. And with a media that is blessedly, I emphasize, blessedly free, and social media, which is monstrously strong and blessedly free in this country. I would not have it any other way, but it's a difficult challenge.
And, see, in World War II in America and in Britain, we had food rationing, right? I mean, that's, this is not as bad as that. And you're right, it could get that bad, and we have to brace ourselves. And right now, before it gets really bad, and I hope that it won't get really bad, I'm making the point that we have to be prepared to get back to peacetime and not have the government run everything in the country. That's a point that Churchill made even during the key crises. But still, he was, everything was allocated. There was a manpower committee. Churchill placed a great man. His name was Ernest Bevin, and Churchill had great faith in him. Churchill got him into politics. He was a labor union leader, and he was meaner than hell. And he was a big-time socialist, but he was a powerful anti-communist. And Churchill liked him and brought him into politics. And by the time, after about a month, he was placed in charge of all war production. And that gave him the power to say who worked where. And he did say that. And it's actually true that Ernest Bevin and his actions helped prepare the way for the socialist victory in 1945.
May I tell you as well that one thing I've been arguing in my Washington Post columns, I've written 3 about congressional law, is that they have to adopt very, very loose special government employee rules so that the president can go and get whomever he needs. And I have in mind what you have taught me about Lord Beaverbrook. Churchill needed airplanes, and he went and got a press baron to produce airplanes. What does that teach us?
Yeah, Beaverbrook was crazy and a very close friend of Churchill's, which you kind of needed to be that for a long time. And Churchill just knew what kind of guy he was, right? And he didn't know anything about making airplanes. He just knew about getting stuff done. And so what he did was he lived on airplanes much of the early months of the war, and every airplane manufacturing place has an airfield beside it. And so he would land his airplane, and he would walk in the factory, and he would say, which planes can you finish today? Everybody get to work on those. And then he'd leave. And so every day there was a stream of planes coming down. And they might have not been. And, it mattered by the day and by the minute when they got there. So you need and remember, we have that idea about loose rules. We have in some substantial ways compromised the executive authority. That means the president can't, large parts of the federal administration are not really accountable to him. And that violates the principle of the unity of the executive, which is not a theory in the founding, it's a fact. And the reasons for it are proclaimed. Nonetheless, this is still America. And if you look at those doctors that you notice cooperating with the president, I would like to think they would cooperate if the president were a Democrat.
Of course.
And then we, in the middle, and if this thing gets bad, we will, I predict and I believe, we Americans, will pull together and make a thing of this. And we'll be better at it than anybody else.
Now, about Churchill, there is also, so number one, go get the best people, and the Congress must make it possible that the best people need not sell off their life work in order to serve. Right now, you have to, I served in the White House counsel's office, and I remember looking at an oil executive asking me, are you out of your mind? I have to divest all of my wealth? And the answer was yes. We got to waive all that. We have to get the best people quickly into jobs like ventilator production. But I want to talk, and you're an expert on how Churchill communicated. I once read something, I can't remember, you'll probably know, that he was referred to as a massive artillery gun, best in a fixed position, firing volleys that would devastate, and not as good in a Q&A with the press. Now, I think President Trump is exactly the opposite. I would love to see him with the press jabbing and weaving and having fun and leaning against his desk, rather than in a set-piece speech at which he is not proficient.
Well, that's a beautiful comparison. It just isn't true as regards what you're quoting from is...
doggone it, I read it somewhere.
Well, Arthur Balfour, a great man whom Churchill loved. Churchill was a young MP. Arthur Balfour is a conservative prime minister, and Churchill is yapping at his heels. Soon, by the way, left the Conservative Party and broke Balfour's administration. They became close friends after that. But Balfour, who was very witty, he said, he has a heavy but not a mobile artillery.
That's it.
But you just should read. Just read Prime Minister's Question Time. They're published in the official biography, and you can get an ebook of them. And I've edited them, all the ones during the war, and they're just hilarious. And
I'm sticking with Balfour. To my point.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I just stick with him. Yeah, but I agree. Trump's rallies. Trump is a responsive politician. He's the people who like him. One of the reasons they like him, and I think that's half the people now, maybe more. One of the reasons they like him is he hears what people say, and he's responsive and quick coming back. And I heard a story. I didn't see it myself. Did you see it? Something about him asking the doctors at a press conference when the White House press corps, who seemed to be so angry, would get to sit in each other's laps again.
I did not see it, but
somebody told me. I don't know. And see, I don't know if he did that or not, but it's easy to believe that he did.
It is easy. And I want people to dwell on what you just said. I've made this point again and again. Rallies are feedback loops for the president. Yeah. When a line works at them, he internalizes it as a political goal. Sometimes that is bad. Mostly it is good, but it is real. It's a feedback loop.
Dinesh D'Souza wrote a good short biography of Ronald Reagan, and those are in scarce supply, by the way. And in it, he makes an interesting point. One of the reasons Reagan was good at what he did was that he practiced for years. And he practiced in front of audiences, in the beginning, speaking on the lecture circuit for General Electric Corporation. And so he just got better and better because he saw how to deal with people, and he could watch their responses. And,
Do you think it is true, Dr. Arnn, that the president, having been for a decade a very successful, probably one of the most successful television actors, because he was acting in The Apprentice, of our era, along with Oprah Winfrey, along with Rush Limbaugh on the air, there are very few people who hold and maintain audiences for a decade, that now that he is learning the role that he needs to play, he is getting better by the day at playing that role.
Yeah, he I have characterizations of him from people I know who work for him. And, he's very quick. He is. I've had several people tell me, and some have said in the press too, he's very good at details. He pays close attention to details when he's interested in a subject, when he thinks the subject is worthy of his attention. And so it was a feature of Churchill and of Lincoln that when you went in to tell him something, you might not get to tell it in the order you intended.
That's like a Supreme Court argument.
But you would leave knowing that he had extracted from you what you wanted to say. And alongside often calling it into question. But he didn't just talk over you. He asked. And if you were doing a really great job, he would, there's a story that's a public story, I'll tell you. One of my students is the regulatory czar. And he gave a report to the president one time, and the president said, so you're the regs guy, are you? And my student said, yes, sir, I am. And he said, is that an exciting life? And Paul Ray is this boy's name. He said, young man's name is, yes, sir, very. And he said, is it exciting like Tiger Woods? Some people think Trump wants to be Tiger Woods. Anyway, Paul said, better. And he said, better. And Paul said, yes, sir, we get to serve the freedom of the American people. And Trump apparently said back, yeah, we do live exciting lives, don't we?
Oh, interesting. Don't go anywhere, America. The Hillsdale Dialogue with Dr. Larry Arnn continues. Even as we learn that Boris Johnson has COVID, we talk with an expert on British Prime Minister Winston Churchill as we continue this week's Hillsdale Dialogue. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. Stay tuned. Now, tell
Ray is this boy's name. He said, young man's name is.
You are highlighting the need to. Now, tell me about the need to.
better. And Paul said, yes, sir, we get to serve the freedom of the American people. And Trump apparently said back, yeah, we do live exciting lives, don't we?
Oh, interesting. Now, tell me about the Welcome back, America. I continue my conversation on the Hillsdale Dialogue with Dr. Larry Arnn about Winston Churchill in wartime. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. Now, tell me about the need to extract information, because I think this is central for everyone who's listening. How Churchill went about it. How did he find his experts? Where did he get them from? How did he get information outside of? Because this is the problem in D.C. In fact, let me answer a different way. You are highly regarded in conservative circles, and I tell people you're the most influential conservative they do not know as influential as he is. How many members of the legislative and executive elite have reached out to you for your wisdom?
Yeah, I have. I'm too busy to do anything but talk to my friends, and despite the way we act, you're one of them, Hugh. So it's the ones that I'm friendly with, and there's a lot of them. And I talk to them, and they ask me questions, and I send them stuff. They want to know, what about this, and I look it up. It's often stuff from history.
Because what bothers me about Washington is that it does not seem to be easily penetrated by good ideas from the outside. It seems just like Fortress D.C.
So Aristotle writes this: practical judgment is the intellectual virtue that makes choices, and choices are hard to make. And the reason you make choices is to have actions. And the choices, the deliberation, it's called, is about the circumstances and the ultimate goals. Now, when a bunch of people get together, our model today, it's actually even the academic model, is people are supposed to come in with a bunch of already prepared positions representing contradictory things, so they can find the least common denominator. And that's not what happens at all. When you reason with people, the ultimate goal, you can't really be colleagues, remember that's a college word, colleagues with people, unless your ultimate goal is the same. In this case, the freedom and justice of the American people. And then people walk in, and everybody's got different bits of knowledge, and they compare it, and then what Aristotle says they find, although circumstances are shifting, is they find the truth. The truth, right, And the truth exists in those circumstances and might be different tomorrow, but they've all got to be looking for it together. I will tell you, I came within an ace of asking the students back to Hillsdale College from spring break, and we reached that decision after an 8-hour meeting, and then we're all emailing each other back and forth at 2 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the morning thinking, is this right? And we get back together the next morning and change our minds. And although I regret that, I think it was probably the right decision. It was surely
but you have
the safer
also,
decision.
I want to contrast that with, you are also hillsdale.edu/US history. On a dime, the college has produced what parents across the country need, a 3-week serious course on U.S. history, supported by the best teachers and materials. That young man, Kyle, is well trained by me, I think. Hillsdale.edu/US history. And on a dime, you're doing what you can. How did that emerge?
Well, because we work together, because we have a common idea about what we're going to try to achieve. And so, we have a lot of online courses. We've never taught online courses to our students here on the campus until yesterday. On Monday, I taught my first big online course with 36 students, and it worked pretty well, and they're scattered all over the country. And the class ended with professions of love. So we figured out how to do that in a week. And all over the campus, the faculty last week, they just worked night and day, all week. Some of them were frightened to death of it, and others are pretty adept, right? And they taught each other, and the IT people taught them. So the point was, we just, and then, there's just a lot of parts of the college, and we all work together. And so Kyle works in external affairs now, and he's the director of online courses, and there's somebody who runs the charter schools, and she works in academic and in the provost office. Well, those two people have been working side by side for a week, and we've got a full slate of online courses going out to our charter schools right now and to homeschoolers across the country.
Hillsdale is a model of responsiveness. We will continue the conversation with Dr. Arnn. All of it about Lincoln and Churchill will be at hillsdale.edu. All of it will be at hughforhillsdale.com. All of it's already at YouTube on my Hugh Hewitt channel, and you need to listen to it. Boris Johnson has COVID. He is doing okay, mild symptoms. Do not let down your guard over what people appear to be reading as good news about the virus. The world has focused, Jim Talent just said, the health sciences of the world are focused on one problem, and so we're gaining ground. But it's a deadly disease for people who are older with underlying conditions. It is a deadly disease for some young people. Do not let down your guard because you see glimmers of hope out there. Don't. We're not through our 15 days yet. We are not even close to saying all clear. We're not going to be there for a long time. Don't let down your guard. Keep physical distancing going, and also keep calm and carry on. I'll carry on with Dr. Larry Arnn right after this. Stay tuned.
This portion of the Hugh Hewitt Show has been brought to you by MyPillow. Call 800-951-5493 or go to mypillow.com and be sure to use a promo code HUGH.
Homeschoolers across the country. And
soon
that's
that
all
will be in
detailed
demand.
between those two
Virginia
departments.
schools closed for the rest of the year. That means a 5-month break for
Homeschoolers across the country. And
soon
that's
that
all
will be in
detailed between
demand.
those
Virginia school. Virginia schools closed for the rest of the year. That means Virginia schools. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt talking with Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College. All of our conversations dating back to 2013 are collected at hughforhillsdale.com. Everything at Hillsdale, including their brand new course on U.S. history for high school students, hillsdale.edu. And that course specifically is at hillsdale.edu/U.S. history. Sign yourself up, sign your kids up, watch it, get smart during this period of physical separation. And now the conclusion of my conversation with Dr. Arnn about leadership in a crisis, about Lincoln and Churchill. The whole of it is already posted at my YouTube channel. Here is its conclusion. Virginia schools closed for the rest of the year. That means a 5-month break for children in elementary school, which is not good for their learning.
Well, the thing that I personally have said that reached and this is one of the reasons why I harp on getting people involved, was Hillsdale College is a big old love fest right now. I mean, scattered across the country. So my class ended with our professing love to each other last night. We were studying Churchill. And why is that? Well, I did this little video, and I said, it's a shameful thing to waste a single day. Now we got to learn to work in a new way. We have to work with the same intensity that we work when we're together. And that means people are not then just passive, right? They get to live human lives and use their abilities. And so we're all fired up, right? And, I always start my classes with questions. And somehow that technology works pretty well. Everybody gets to talk. And everybody can see everybody else. That's cool. But I get them to write some questions. Like a third of the class every time's got to write a comment or a question on the readings for the day. Well, the first question is, how is Hillsdale College going to come back stronger than ever? And the second question is, when do we get to come back to campus? So the first 20 minutes of the class, I talked about those two things. Everybody's interested in those two things. Everybody wants to do what they can to make those two things happen. That's how you get something running so that it's powerful. And remember, that is the magic of America. It's not scientific expertise at the top. The magic of America is that everyone is a citizen and everyone is a potential volunteer.
Now, Dr. Arnn, I want to close by asking you to spend the last 6 or 7 minutes about Churchill and time frame. We are concentrated right now in the early... George W. Bush, after 9/11, said, "We are met in the middle hour of our grief," as he gathered people at National Cathedral. Single best line of his presidency, comforting, but also aware of time. Middle hour of our grief is very different from the hour of victory over the virus, but Churchill never did not stop thinking about what was going on 5 and 10 and 20 years down the road. How did he run that double track, the urgency of war production, of troop deployments, of a second front, of meeting with Stalin, but also the Stalin character is marching on Europe as surely as we are marching on Berlin?
So there's a single episode I thought of to answer this question. One of my favorite things about Churchill, there are so many, by the way, is that in November of 1943, think what's going on, right? From at the end of 1941, America comes in. 1942 was almost all a disaster. It sort of changed. Churchill called it the hinge of fate in late 42. 43, we were winning. We were still months away from getting back on the continent. And in November of 43, out of nowhere, Churchill launched a parliamentary bill to abolish what was called Defense Regulation 18B. And 18B permitted them to detain and imprison anyone suspected of being a German sympathizer. And the war was not won yet. D-Day was still months in advance. And everybody said, they said, this is premature. And Churchill, if I can find it, said, I'll have to paraphrase it. He said, here it is. On no account should we lend any countenance to the totalitarian idea of the right of the executive to lock up its political opponents or unpopular people. The door should be kept open for the full restoration of the fundamental British rights of habeas corpus and trial by jury on charges known to the law. You see, he carried the day in Parliament by reminding Britain why they're fighting the war. And so one job of leadership today is to keep that in mind. We are not responsible only for people being safe. We're also responsible for them being free. And so we should keep up that talk as the object of this battle.
And not just this year or next election, but a decade and a generation and a century further. We can't lose liberty. I mean, we can't surrender that.
That's right. That's urgent. And, the elements of liberty are well known. There are principles and institutions, and then characters of people. And the principles are stated in the Declaration of Independence, and the institutions are described in the Constitution of the United States, now much impaired. And we have to get back to the work of restoring the proper operation of the Constitution of the United States after this is over. And, of course, that'll be a fierce battle. This is a fierce political year. And so we have to keep all that in mind while we remember to do what we have to do to save lives from this virus.
A last question, Dr. Arnn. There is one great strengthening of the Constitution underway, which is the reminder of people that it is governors who get things done because it is states that are co-equal sovereigns with the federal government. And President Trump has been emphatic, though often distorted by the media, in telling the governors to do what they do, which is govern.
Yeah, that's right. And that's, the state variation is a good thing because, we can all make we're going to make a lot of mistakes in the middle of this thing, a lot. And then the question is, are we all going to make all the same mistakes? Or can we have variability and local action and individual people helping, and then we'll figure out what the right thing to do is. And Churchill loved to say, we will not repeat the mistakes of the past. We will make new mistakes. So that's the thing, right? You need, we're supposed to be able to run our government, and it is bureaucratized now, and it needs to be diminished, and yet it does need to do what it's doing, which is unite in a crisis for concerted action. That's what we did in the wars. That's what we're doing with this virus, and that's good.
A last question, a personal question about both Lincoln and Churchill. Humor and celebration. You cannot drearily proceed through years, weeks, months. You must have good humor. You must celebrate. How did they do that?
Well, they had wicked senses of humor, both of them. I'll tell one from Lincoln and one from Churchill. McClellan was succeeded by Hooker, who went down in the wilderness and at Chancellorsville had a chance to end the war and instead got his fanny beat. And he sent a cable in the middle of all that to Lincoln, and Lincoln read it in front of the cabinet. He says, he signs it off, "From my headquarters in the saddle." And Lincoln looks up and says, "Hooker's got his headquarters where his hindquarters are supposed to be." And then, there are so many from Churchill. Here's a great one that he said to the French that got around. And this is kind of grim and kind of ironic and funny, too. They said, Reynaud asked Churchill, when he can see that Churchill's going to fight on whatever the French do. And, that's a very sad meeting. And Churchill had just refused to send the rest of the British Air Force to France. And he said, Reynaud said, "How can you hope to fight them alone?" And Churchill says, "Well, I haven't thought very much about that, but I expect that the plan will be to drown most of them on the way over and kill the rest on the beach." So you see, that's human, right?
But it's human. Ironic and it's grim, but it's also funny.
Yeah, that's it. And that thing, these are people of tremendous sympathy. And, Churchill was a blubber baby. He cried all the time. And, He cried every time he went and toured the bombing damage, right? And he was moved by that and by the bravery of the people. And he extolled the bravery of the people. And that's what's, the thing that you can tell. I think that we're doing the right thing here. But I'm also frustrated by it because it's not the kind of battle where we can give people apart. And we need to find a way to do that.
Remember, beat the bug bonds. I do believe we're spending $2 trillion, an astonishing amount of money, and a lot of us would buy what we used to call Liberty bonds or war bonds. I just think about that. Dr. Larry Arnn, hillsdale.edu for this and every conversation we've had. We will meet again at an appointed time next week. I appreciate your extended time this week to get a message out early to people who are leading and really are a little overwhelmed. I'm not sure that Lincoln and Churchill were much given to self-doubt, were they?
Well, of course, they questioned and examined themselves all the time. But when the bell rang, they were always ready to go.
That's what people need. Larry Arnn, Hillsdale College. Thank you, Doctor. Always a pleasure. The entire conversation is posted at my YouTube channel. Will be at hillsdale.edu, hughforhillsdale.com. That course I mentioned, hillsdale.edu/US history. Now, as you know, the big news of the morning is actually somewhat mixed because Boris Johnson tested positive for the virus, but he has mild symptoms. But he is physically distancing. He will become, as Tom Hanks and his wife Rita were, poster children for how to deal with the disease the right way. I must say, I see great ideas everywhere. Del Wilbur, who you should be following on Twitter, at Del Wilbur, gets a prize for this idea. 18 minutes ago, posted it on Twitter. And just Del Wilbur, DELWILBER, wrote the great book on Reagan being shot, the Rawhide Down. Great book to read, by the way, while you're in quarantine or self-isolating. Del suggests 2 golf stars should engage in a match play tourney in April, staying 6 feet apart from being tested for the virus after being tested. It could air on TV. Proceeds go to families of medical workers, etc. Who would you want to see play? If this is even considered safe, he added. Maybe too dangerous? I don't know. Only sport I could think of where this would work. I think there's a brilliant idea. In fact, I think they ought to repeat the same thing on all the great courses in the land with different winners of different matches advancing through match play to a new championship. And Del wrote back on Twitter, ask your listeners to reply with who should play. And go follow them and do so. It's a great idea. I think it could be done safely. ReliefFactor.com is another great idea. You need to be out doing your own kind of safe match play. Walking, you can go hit balls if you can do it at a range that lets you, puts them out and doesn't interact with you. I saw people playing golf on my long ramble yesterday. I believe Dr. Fauci told me it's safe if you don't go to the clubhouse afterward and have a few drinks. If you stay out of the locker room where the virus can linger on surfaces, there are ways to stay active, and ReliefFactor.com will help you do just that. $19.95 gets you started. A 3-week trial pack if you're using new muscle groups because you're doing new kinds of exercises. It's support for the temporary relief of the minor aches and pains that come your way in life. Don't forget honorboundcoffee.com as well. All proceeds, all profits go to military families. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you. This has been quite the wild week, and it will get wilder. You turn to me because you trust me. Let me tell you, this effort to be on the air is because of Dwayne and Adam and Ben, and because of Danielle and Diana, and because of a Salem Media Network, which is vast, from Ed Atzinger and Stu Epperson, who started it, and Dave Centrell and Phil Boyce, who run my side of the business, to Mike Reed and Tom Tradup, and GMs and technicians and engineers across all of our affiliates and every radio station in America that carries me and carries any broadcast. I'll be on Meet the Press Sunday. It's a very complicated thing to do it this Sunday. It's going to be complicated to continue to broadcast. We're going to keep here. We're going to keep doing this. I want to thank them all. It's really thousands of people allow me to talk to you. And yeah, we were early to the bell. Very early to the bell. January 20th. I started talking about this, so we were 2 months ahead of the curve. Why? Because I served 17 years on a public health commission in Orange County, and I went through H1N1, and I read John Barry's The Great Influenza, and I knew that every time it shows its terrible head, the possibility of pandemic, you have to act as though it's going to happen. And now it's happened. But as the markets have shown us, we have amazing resiliency. And as Jim Talent said this morning, the entire world's health sciences have turned their full attention on one virus, and we will make progress. In the meantime, I just am so grateful for people like BestHotGrills.com. Rhett Rasmussen has kept his people working at a physically spaced, safe distance. They've offered 15% off to keep selling grills, which are the best grills in America. AndrewandTodd.com have kept their people working from home, preparing people to lock in terrific mortgage rates to buy or refinance whenever you are ready. 888-888-1172. ReliefFactor.com has kept the shipments coming. Our friends, all of our sponsors, Hillsdale.edu is out there working around the clock to make sure that there are online courses available. Everybody is actually back on the same page of it being a national crisis. There are some crazy people online who want to exploit. I don't read the comments of my Washington Post column this morning about how do we confront China over their malpractice, over their endangering the world. And I know the trolls are out. Many of them are CCP people. I don't care. I don't pay attention to alarmists. Keep calm, carry on, practice physical spacing, and watch the news and listen to me on Monday, because it's going to get worse before it gets better, but it's not going to end the world. Markets are going to recover. The economy is going to come back. We'll figure this out. I would like to see war bonds, the moral equivalent of war bonds, sold. I would like every citizen to be able to be involved. But in the meantime, I got a great note from Glenn in the restaurant business. Keep calm. Carry on. Wash your hands. Order takeout and tip generously. Yes, 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 yes. Keep calm. Carry on. Wash your hands. Order takeout and tip generously. To all of my advertisers, thank you for staying true. To all of the people who listen, thank you. You can always write me, HughHewitt.com. Generalissimo screens for the nuts. We shut you off. But we'll be back on Monday with new news. Every network in America should carry every minute of the presidential briefing and every minute of Joe Biden. We are a free country because we have elections. And when we elect, these people are responsible. And every network on every broadcast platform should try and carry every minute of every presidential, vice presidential task force briefing. They should be talking to experts. They should not be exploiting fear. They should not be dealing political divisiveness. They should keep calm, flatten the cruelty curve, flatten the partisanship curve, and follow the people now for the next few decades ahead who are leading with grace and determination. Tom Cotton is in my mind, Mike Gallagher. They were first to the alarm. I think Tom Cotton was first to the alarm, as this show was, as far as I know, first to the alarm on the virus after the Wall Street Journal published the first article on the Wuhan outbreak. So trust the people who got it right. Discard the people who ignored it. Pay no attention to the people who couldn't be bothered because they were pursuing partisan witch hunts. And stay calm, stay focused. Wash your hands, order takeout, tip generously. I love that, Glenn. I love that. Also want to thank every spouse of everyone who's working, especially the fetching Mrs. Hewitt, Mrs. Radio Blogger, Mrs. Adam Youngman, Gentleman doesn't have one, Mrs. Tradup, Mrs. Boyce, Mrs. Atzinger, everybody who's working, Mrs. Santrella, Mrs. Reed, everybody who is working and has to work, Mrs. Todd on Meet the Press, Mrs. John, all of you, thank you for holding down the home fire, because we know it ain't easy, especially those who are at home with small children, as Sonny Bunch alluded to today. It's not easy. We know that. Say your prayers in whatever form works for you, in whatever denomination in which you reside. Keep praying. Hopefully on Monday, news will be better. Hopefully it keeps getting better. May not, but we'll be here on Monday to bring you the latest. Thank you all. Thank you especially the people who make this show possible and who listen to it. I'll be back on Monday on the very next Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the Poor.